Hey y'all, today we have a huge meal prep video. Okay, so this does say that it's a postpartum meal prep, but that's because I'm making it for my niece who just had her second baby. But you can use these recipes for anybody. So, it's just a lot of really good recipes. I think I ended up doing 17 separate recipes. So, there's a lot of good stuff in this video. So, I hope that y'all stick around and watch it. So, what I'm doing right now, I always do sort of a pre-prep when I do these big meal preps because it just makes my life a lot easier. So if you can get a lot of the stuff that you can kind of cook ahead of time done, it'll make these meal preps go by a lot faster. So I am just putting some bacon down on some aluminum foil. I'm going to put these in the oven, in a cold oven, set the temperature to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and let it cook for about 20 minutes, 25, depending on how crispy you want it. Now I'm going to get all of my cheese shredded up. I am making several things. Am I making several things with cheese? I don't know that I'm making a lot of things with cheese, actually. I think I just needed a lot of different cheeses for one recipe. We're going to see. We're going to see. Look, by the time we get to the end of this voiceover, I'll be just hoarse and ragged because I'm going to do a lot of talking in here, y'all. So I'm just shredding my cheese up. Y'all know anything that I use in a video, I will try to link for y'all down below. The cheese grater, the bag holders, all the things, because somebody always asks me about those. So I will be sure to try to link everything. So I got all my cheese shredded up, and now I'm going to get my vegetables prepped. I needed to prep some bell pepper and a bunch of onion, because y'all know me and onion, I put onion in everything. But this little chopper too, I think I got it off of Amazon. It's one that I saw on the TikTok shop, but I find that if I see stuff on TikTok, I can usually look it up on Amazon, and sometimes I can find it cheaper, and you get the faster shipping and all that. So, and the better return policy usually. So I will link that for y'all as well. So like I said, I'm going to get a bunch of onion also diced up because I use a lot of onion, and you don't want to stop for every recipe you do and cut up another onion and cut up another bell pepper. So get it all done ahead of time and you will be good to go. This video, you may see a wardrobe change. This took me a couple of days to do because y'all know I can't stand on my ankle a long time right now, but I got it all done. So it took me maybe 2.5 days to get it all done. And my freezer is so full because I haven't taken it to my niece yet. But she's home from the hospital now, so I'll probably be trying to go this weekend, I think, to take her everything. So now I'm getting my chicken trimmed up. I just wanted to show y'all because some people ask why I trim the chicken. That was a big piece of bone right there. That is why I trim my chicken. I don't just throw my chicken into a crock pot or a pot or anything because I don't like all the gristle and bone and fat. All right, so first recipe, which really isn't a recipe, the first thing we're going to make is some breakfast sandwiches. Y'all have seen me do these on the channel before. You can get this big pack of croissants. These are, obviously, you can see big croissants, but the pack, I think there's 12 in each pack, and they're not but like $5 or $6 at Sam's. So if you have a Sam's membership and you're going to make these sandwiches, do them on croissants because it's so good. And with all the prep that you saw me do, I completely spaced and forgot to do eggs. So these are just going to be bacon and cheese sandwiches. But because all of my eggs were dedicated to other recipes, and I was like, this is the only one where I can kind of get away with not putting it in there. But if they want to go back and add some egg, they can, or maybe just serve some eggs on the side with their sandwich. So I just use a piece of cheese and a few pieces of that bacon. See how nice and crispy that gets when you cook it in the oven, y'all? And you don't have grease all over the counter. So I just put the little sandwiches together, and then I'm going to put them into a gallon Ziploc bag. And I used to wrap these individually and then put them in the Ziploc bag. But honestly, I have kind of found that you don't really need to do that necessarily. So I'm just going to put them into a couple of Ziploc bags. And my niece did say that, like, she doesn't have a lot of freezer space. So I'm giving a few of these things to my daughter, like for my grandkids and stuff. So I'm going to do, not all of it. Some of it's all going to my niece. But if I have, like, extra things, I'm going to send those to my daughter, since my niece doesn't have room for everything. And I can always make her more if she wants it. All right, so the next thing that I'm getting started is the chili and the taco soup. So I have probably 1.5 pounds, maybe 2 pounds of meat in each pot. And I'm adding some of that onion that I diced up. Now I'm going to cook both of these. I'm going to brown both of these things of meat. I'm going to drain it, and then I'm going to reserve some of this meat for a different recipe. I just didn't want to put all of it into one pot because I don't think it would have been quite enough room, and I was cooking 2 different meals anyway, so I just split it, and then I put up the rest. You'll see that come back in a minute. So for my chili, this is just like hot dog chili, so it's not like beans and all that stuff. I do my ground beef and onions, and then I add in 2 cans of tomato sauce, and I'm going to have all of the recipes written out, linked, printable down in the description box for y'all. And so anyway, for my hot dog chili or for Frito pie or something like that, that's what this kind of chili is for. I make it very simple. I use, like I said, the ground beef, onions, 2 cans of tomato sauce, and 2 packs of whatever chili seasoning that you like. I do make homemade chili seasoning. I make a lot of these seasonings I use today homemade, but when I'm doing a huge meal prep like this, I do so much cooking anyway that I don't want to have to stop to restock homemade things, so it's just easier to buy the packages. So for my taco soup, I'm adding in 1 can of diced tomatoes, 1 can of tomato sauce, 1 can of red kidney beans. Light red is what I use, but I've also done black beans, whatever kind of beans you like, and a can of corn. And then I'm going to mix that up, and then the seasonings I'm going to add to this is 1 packet of taco seasoning and 1 packet of ranch seasoning. And that's all you have to add to this. And then I do add to both of these pots a little bit of water, not a whole lot to the chili because I don't want it to have a lot of juice because of what we're using it for. So you say maybe a 1/2 can of water, and then I'm going to cook that down. And then I put a pretty good bit in my taco soup because it is a soup, so I want a little bit of juice in there. And then there's my seasonings that I'm adding in. And then I'm just going to, well, I'm going to drop the packet right down into the pan, obviously, or the pot. But I'm going to bring these, let them come to a boil, let them get good and warm. And then I'm going to cut these down to a simmer, put the lid on them, and then I let them cook for several hours. I mean, you can let them cook, 30 minutes to an hour and be fine. But the longer you cook them, the better they are. So once I got my soup and my chili done, I let it cool down. I just let it cool down in the pan. And then we're going to transfer it to these little plastic freezer containers. And I wasn't sure how many this was going to make, so I started out with 4. But you can these are, I think, 16-ounce containers. Yeah, 2 cups. And I'll link these for y'all too. But so this pot of soup ended up making 4 of those, and then, I had to feed the chef. So I had that for my dinner that night. And for our chili, like I said, it's a very simple, you can eat it just like a regular chili if you have somebody that doesn't like beans and stuff. But this one is the one that we always make to make Frito pies or chili dogs or something like that. Sort of just a simple chili. And it's very, very good. So I just thought I would make this for them too, just to give them, I wanted them to have a lot of options. I want them to have a lot of options on what they could have, because you don't want to eat the same thing and maybe you're not in the mood for this or that, or, y'all know how it is. So I just wanted to make things that were simple. And some things I did a lot of Crockpot meals in here, and then I did a few things that I cooked completely. And that way, they have options as far as that too. If her husband just wants to throw something into the crock pot before he leaves for work, or if they just want to take one of these out and just heat up a bowl of chili. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is start putting our freezer meals together. So I just kind of I talked to them, and of course they were like, it doesn't matter to us. We'll eat anything, everything, will be good. And I know that they'll appreciate anything. But again, I wanted to give them some variety, but I also wanted to give them some things that I knew were really good. So we're going to put together some roast for them, the Mississippi pot roast. If y'all haven't had a Mississippi pot roast, I'm just showing you right now how to put it together. It's delicious. And I remembered this time to get out my vacuum sealer. So instead of using a bunch of Ziploc bags, I'm going to vacuum seal these freezer meals. I don't know why it never occurs to me when I do these videos, but here we are. And because I haven't used it in a long time, I was like, I didn't even think to fold the bag down, which is what I should have done. But, it's neither here nor there. But I know somebody's going to look at it and go, why didn't you fold the bags down? So that's why, y'all. I just didn't think about it. So you see the bag is way too long to be in here. So, I'm going to have to maneuver a little bit in a minute. Now, they are a family of, now it's a family of 4. But it's my niece, her husband, her 2-year-old, and then the new baby. So I knew this big roast, I could get 2 out of this for them, 2 meals out of it. Now, they could have cooked a gigantic roast, but they may not want to eat roast for 3 days. You know what I mean? And here's where I struggled thinking, how the heck am I going to get this in this bag? And you can see it fell right off my bag holder. So, here we are. But again, ended up being a big roast, so I was able to get 2 meals out of this for her. So I'm gonna, when I add in all of the seasonings and stuff, I am going to split it between the 2 bags. But again, the full recipe will be down in the description box for y'all if you're just making one big roast. And don't worry, I wipe off everything in between meals that I make. And the bags, after I get them all sealed up and everything, I wiped everything down good so there's not any raw stuff on the outside of her bags. So I'm adding in some ranch seasoning. Normally you would add 1 packet. I'm splitting it between the 2. So half of a packet of ranch seasoning mix. And it's the combination of this stuff that makes these so good, y'all. Then I'm going to add in a pack of brown gravy mix. I also use the au jus mix sometimes for this. Either one works really well. And I do have a homemade au jus mix that is really, really good if y'all are looking for one. There is a video on that. So I also have a brown gravy mix video, but I'm actually out of brown gravy mix right now, so I have to make some more of that for myself. And then the last thing, seasoning packet that I'm going to add is onion soup mix. I also make some very good onion soup mix if y'all need a recipe for that. But 1 pack, I'm splitting it between the 2 bags, obviously. And then that's the seasoning packets that we're going to add. So then we're going to add in a half a stick of butter to each one of our bags, because normally we would do 1 stick of butter. Y'all, I don't want anybody to be confused. That's why y'all are probably like, why do you keep saying, this? We know, we can see it's 2 different things. But not everybody is a cook, and not everybody is, comfortable in the kitchen, so I don't want anybody to be confused. So I'm sorry if I repeat myself. I actually had somebody comment on one of my videos that I talk too much, but maybe I do. I don't know. Y'all think I talk too much? I don't know. I just feel like I'm explaining stuff. So anyway, now I'm adding some pepperoncini peppers. You can add as many or as few as you want. I didn't want to add too many in here just because, like I said, they do have a 2-year-old. So I don't want to make anything that's like too spicy for him to eat. And these aren't really spicy, but they do give it a little bit of kick if you add a whole lot of it. So I'm not going to dump any juice in there. And I'm just going to add about 3 or 4 to each bag. So then I am going to add in a little bit of beef broth. Not a whole lot. I just don't want, I want to give it a little bit of juice. It's going to create its own juice anyway, but I like to give it a little bit extra in case they want to make a gravy with it and, like put it over some potatoes or something like that, or rice, or, whatever. So that is all that goes into our bags. Now, this is my vacuum sealer. Y'all, I have had this thing for at least, I don't know, maybe I don't even know, maybe 6, 7 years, something like that. It's not fancy. I got it off of Amazon. I will try to go back. Hopefully it's still in my history, and I'll link it for y'all too. But it's super easy to use, and it's very tiny, and it came with all these bags. I don't know, like 100 bags or something. So I still have bags. But I'm just going to vacuum seal these up, and then this one I'm not going to label because it's very clear what it is. But she will also have access to all of my printable recipes. I may actually print them all for her. That would probably be a good idea, huh? But anyway, that way she will know what she needs to do, or her and her husband, she, whichever one of them is doing it, they'll know what, they need to do to cook these. So that gives her 2 Mississippi pot roast. And I was jealous because I really love that, and I didn't get one for myself. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is beef tips and gravy. This is a fan favorite. Everybody loves beef tips and gravy, I feel like. So I am just putting my beef tips. This is probably 1.5 pounds maybe of lean stew meat. You can also, if you don't want to get it like this, Lord, I dropped it all over myself. If you don't want to get buy the stew meat already cut up, you can get some steaks and cut that into chunks, or whatever, you can do to make it work for you. So now I'm going to add a little bit more of that onion in there. And see, this is why I prep stuff ahead, because you see how this makes it so much easier. I can open up the bags. I start dumping ingredients in. I don't have to stop and cut up another onion, And I'm telling y'all this, and I've said this in videos, in my meal prep videos before, but in the beginning, I didn't think about it. And I would put one meal together, and then I would be like, oh, okay, I need an onion for this one. So then I would have to stop, cut up another onion. And I was one day I was just why are you doing this? Why are you why did you not just do this at the beginning? So now that's why I do that. And I'm telling you, if you're going to do meal preps like this, these big meal preps, and you're just getting started, if you've done this a while, you already know. But if you're new to this, make sure to take the time to prep stuff, even if you have to prep it the day before. All right, so the next thing I'm going to add in here is 1 can of cream of mushroom soup. You can use whatever kind of cream soup. If you don't like mushroom, use cream of celery or whatever you want to use. This, I actually also have a video on how to make your own cream soup. I have a video on everything I feel like I'm saying today. So then I'm going to add in a packet of brown gravy mix, because we do make a gravy with this one, because you do want to serve this over something. Beef tips and mashed potatoes or rice or noodles or whatever you want to serve it over. So then I added in a packet of the onion soup mix. And then I'm going to add in, excuse me, y'all, a little bit of onion powder, a little bit of garlic powder, and then I'll add a little bit of pepper also. I'm not going to add any salt in here because we have the seasoning packets in there, and we have the cream soup, and those are usually salty enough just right by themselves. So, and they can always, when they cook it, if they feel like they want to add a little salt to it, they can do it then, but I don't want to do it and it be too salty for them, So now I'm going to pour in some beef broth, probably about a cup or so, but I'm going to pour it into the cream soup can, and that way I can get all that cream soup that was kind of left behind. I'm just going to kind of mix that around a little bit so we don't lose any of that going into I almost said our jar. I've been making so many jarred meals lately, I don't even know what a bag is anymore, y'all. So add your beef broth right over into your bag. And this, what is it called? Vacuum sealer. This vacuum sealer has a setting on it, which I'm sure all of them do. It has a setting for wet ingredients or dry. So I just make sure to put it on my, on the wet setting, so that it doesn't just suck a bunch of liquid up into it. And then it seals, and then it vacuums out the air, and look, I don't even know what buttons I'm over there pushing. And then it just seals itself up. And I don't know why I keep pushing, that's the vacuum seal button. I just keep pushing it like I don't have any sense. But then I figured it out and pushed the seal button. And then you just pop it open and your bag is nice and sealed. And you have another meal ready to go in the freezer. And I did write the names on these bags, you know, of what they were. I should have done that before I filled them, but, you know, here we are. I did it on the chicken. And that way she'll know what's in each of the bags. Okay, so we're doing 3 of these chicken freezer meals. So I'm going to put 2 chicken breasts into each of my little baggies. You can do more if you are feeding a lot more people. You can do less if you're not as many people. But even if it's just me, a lot of times I'll put, still do like 2 chicken breasts. Because I'm telling y'all, 2 chicken breasts goes a lot further than you think. But sometimes even if it's just me, I'll do them. And then that way I have leftovers all week or whatever. So, but any way that works for you will be just fine. And a few of these I had cut up. That's why it looks like I'm putting more in there. And then this chicken I'm going to put away for right now, but I'm going to cook it so I can shred it in a minute for a different recipe. So you'll see some more chicken in a minute. All right, so the first thing that I'm making is chicken and gravy. So I'm dumping in a packet of ranch seasoning, and I'm going to dump in a packet of brown gravy mix. If you have chicken gravy, you can use chicken gravy, pork. It doesn't really matter, honestly. I didn't even think about it, and I bought a whole bunch of brown gravy mix, so that's what I'm using. So you're going to add those in there, and then we're going to add in a can of the cream of mushroom soup again. Again, if you want to do cream of chicken, if you want to do cream of celery, any of those will work. You just want to add the cream soup because it just makes the gravy on the chicken and gravy just, it's just so good, y'all. Trust me, if you don't already have a recipe for this, try mine. Just try mine and see how you like it. All right, so for this one, I'm going to add in some chicken broth. I'm going to add it right to my can again. And then I'm going to mix it up so I can get all of that out of there. I did about 3/4 of the can. I didn't want to put too much liquid in here. Just because I don't want it to be, chicken makes a lot of juice on its own. You know, a lot of meats do anyway, but chicken I find especially makes, you know, a lot of water. It puts off a lot of water, whatever the case is, whatever I'm trying to say, y'all know. So I don't put too much liquid in here, but I do want to put a little bit because, again, it is called chicken and gravy, so we want to make sure. So what I'm doing, if you see me doing right there, is trying to kind of get the powder mixed up into the liquid a little bit. And then you see I had sense enough this time to fold my bags down too. You know, I'm learning, y'all. I'm learning. Okay, so the next one we're going to do is queso chicken. This one is really, really good if you are going to... Look, flinging it everywhere. If you're going to make, you can do tacos with this. I'll get it out in a minute. Or I like to make it and then put it on nachos. It's really good for that. So, but you can just eat it by itself if you want to. But it is very, very good. So I added in my chicken breast, a can of Rotel tomatoes, and y'all know I did mild because I'm weak. But whatever, you know, if you like some heat, put the hot ones in there. Then I added a packet of taco seasoning, and then I'm going to add about half of this jar of chili con queso, I think is what it is, dip. You can add a whole jar in there if you want it extra cheesy. You know, whatever. I do a half. I find that a half works, you know, pretty good for that amount of chicken. And then the last one that we're going to make, well, it's not the last recipe, but the last in this little set that I'm making is barbecued chicken. And all of these, when you cook them in the crock pot, you'll shred them. And again, all of the times for cooking, measurements, and all that will be down in the description box for y'all. Because I know somebody's thinking, you didn't tell us how much. And I'm going to try to remember to put... what's it called? Like chapters in here so that you can skip around if you want a certain recipe. So what I added in here, I have my chicken. I added in about a cup of brown sugar, 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. And then I'm adding in probably a teaspoon or so of oregano and like a cup of barbecue sauce. And I like Sweet Baby Ray's. You use whatever kind of barbecue sauce you like, okay? And then we're just going to do the same thing with these that we did with the other ones. We're going to put them right down into our vacuum sealer, and we're going to vacuum seal them. And then these will be nice and sealed and good to go and ready for them. And this is going to save some space. It's going to save some space in the freezer. I did a meal prep. It's been a while. And I did Ziploc bags, y'all. And I wasn't thinking about it. And I didn't realize it wasn't sealed enough. And before it could freeze, the whole thing spilled in my freezer. And it was a nightmare. So if you have a vacuum sealer, use that. All right. So the next thing I'm doing is meatballs. This is just a bag of frozen meatballs. Great value, right from Walmart. Use whatever kind of meatballs you want. You can do homemade meatballs if you want to. There's a meatball back there. I'll find it in a minute, I promise. These are like, we always called these like baby shower meatballs. I don't eat meatballs, so I can't personally vouch for the taste of these, but everybody always asks for these. So, you know, there's that. But you're going to add in here, I know this is going to be weird if y'all don't know about this. You're going to add grape jelly into these meatballs, okay? You're going to add, I'm going to add, this is like a, I don't know, an 18 or 20 ounce container. I'm going to add half to each one of these bags of meatballs. Okay. And this is one that I'm giving to my daughter because this is one of her favorite things. So I made the one for my niece, and then I also made one for my daughter. Now you can use these as, like I said, appetizers at whatever, baby showers or whatever you're doing appetizers for, football games or whatever. But they're also really good. Well, I don't know, but I'm just telling y'all, they would be really good if you wanted to make like a meatball sub. Okay. And so now what I'm adding in is some more Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce. And this is, I think, a 20 ounce container of this also. And I'm adding half to each bag. Okay. So that's how you make the meatballs. That's it. I found the meatball. Aren't y'all excited? So all I'm going to do now is seal these up. Most of these meals, I would say maybe put them in the refrigerator and let them thaw overnight because they're going to cook faster that way. But you absolutely can throw stuff in frozen because I have done that. So I'm just telling you. And for these freezer meals, I'm almost positive that in the instructions I did put the time to cook them from frozen and the time to cook them if you thaw them. So if I didn't, ask me, I'll let you know. But I'm almost positive that I did put that in the recipe instructions. So yeah, that's it. This is so super simple. And I was like, that just gives them something else. She can cut some meatballs up and let the 2-year-old snack on those or have those for dinner. What, you know what I'm saying? Or you can put these over something or just eat them as the meat in your dish, whatever, you know? All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is macaroni and cheese. My 2-year-old nephew, great nephew, we went on a cruise in February, and he just was not wanting to eat and stuff. And I was like, I told the waiter, I said, can you bring him just a bowl of macaroni and cheese? And that baby tore that macaroni and cheese up. So I'm doing a meal prep, I have to add the macaroni and cheese. So what I put in my pot was 2 tablespoons of butter, and I let that melt. And then I added in 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and I let that cook around until the raw flour was cooked out just a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes. And now I'm adding in 2 cans of evaporated milk. Make sure you shake it up good. I add the first can slowly, and then I let it come to a boil, kind of thicken up a little bit. And then I add the second one in there. And then I just let that come back to a boil again. Just kind of, let it heat up. And that was my noodles cooking on the other side, my macaroni noodles. And it's just one box, like a 16-ounce box of macaroni noodles. This will make a 9x13 pan. All right, so for the cheese, I have my oven, by the way, preheated to 350 degrees also. So you're going to add in 3/4 of a 16-ounce block of Velveeta. if you want to add the whole thing in there, you just go right ahead. It'll be fine. But 3/4 of the block of Velveeta. And I just cut it into little chunks. And we're going to add that in there, and we're going to let that start to melt, okay? Y'all don't look at my boot. I'm hobbling around the kitchen. So I'm going to start to let that melt a little bit, and then we're going to add our other cheeses. You're going to add roughly a half a block of the cheddar cheese and maybe half a block of the Monterey Jack cheese. I have the measurements for y'all. I've made this so many times, I kind of eyeball it now. I don't really measure. But you're going to add that in there and just let it cook until your cheeses are melted. And then I add a little bit of paprika just for, a little something extra. You can add the smoked paprika. So now, normally I would pour this all into a 9x13 pan. But I wanted to do individual servings so that if she didn't want to cook a whole thing of macaroni and cheese, she could just heat one little thing up for the baby. And so I just dumped it all into a bowl, and all those little aluminum pans, the ones that I'll use in this video, I will also link those. I'll make sure to link all that for y'all too. So I'm just mixing my cheese and my noodles up really good. It looks like it's too runny. I promise you it's not. So I sprayed these with cooking spray, and then I'm just filling up each of my small containers. They hold, as you can see, about a cup. I think that's a cup of the macaroni and cheese. And then what was left, I just poured into this other little container. And I am going to top these with more cheese. And then you're going to need to cover them with foil. Bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, like I said, covered for about 10 minutes. And then don't throw that foil away because we're going to use that again in a minute. You're going to cook it covered for 10 minutes and then uncover it and cook it for another 30 minutes. Look at that bubbling, yummy goodness, y'all. So I let it cool down, and then I'm just going to put the little lid that goes on these pans. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I need to nap. Okay, I'm just going to put that on there. Now they know that's macaroni and cheese, right? And then we're going to take that foil that we had covered them with earlier, and I'm going to cut that into 6 pieces. And that way I can use the foil that I already used and, to cover up these little containers. And that way you're not wasting anything. So, I'm trying to be frugal around here. So like I said, I'm just cutting it into little squares big enough to cover these up. And then I'm just going to label them. Or not label them, I'm going to just write on the top of them what they are. And then that's macaroni and cheese, good to go. Okay, so here's that ground beef that I had set aside earlier. It's going to make a comeback. We are about to make some baked ziti. This baked ziti is so good, y'all. I know I always say everything is so good, but it really is good. So I just dumped that ground beef in there. This is probably 1.5 pounds-ish, somewhere around in there, maybe 2 pounds. Well, yeah, it's probably closer to 2 pounds. It was a good bit. And then I'm going to take 2 containers of whatever spaghetti sauce you like. Or if you want to do it homemade, you absolutely can. But, we're doing things. What is that? What was it? Sandra Lee semi-homemade? That's what we're doing over here. So you're going to mix your spaghetti sauce into your meat. And obviously the meat's already cooked, so that saved us a step right there, which was fantastic. Then I'm going to add a tiny bit of water to each one of my jars just to get the rest of the sauce out of there. Shake them up real good and then pour that in there. We don't want it overly saucy. We don't want it overly juicy, whatever I'm trying to say. We don't want it super runny, okay? So we're going to get that mixed up, and then we're going to let that come to a boil, and then I'm going to cover it, and we're going to let that simmer until we're ready for it, okay? I've got my water boiling over there for my noodles. So now what I'm going to do is get the cheese mixture together. So what you're going to add for this, and I doubled this recipe because I had so much meat that if you make this regularly, you would just use 1 thing of one thing of spaghetti sauce and 1 pound of ground beef. But I'm doubling it, like I said, because I wanted some for myself. I wanted one for myself. So anyway, I'm doubling the recipe. So what you're going to need is This, again, I'm telling you what's doubled. I'll give you the real recipe down in the description box. So I ended up doing a cup of ricotta cheese. If you don't like ricotta, you can use cottage cheese if you want to. I added, it calls for a half of a cup of parm, and I thought I had some Parmesan cheese, but I didn't. All I had was like the kind you put on top of spaghetti, so I used what was left in my container. Then I added some oregano, I added some garlic powder, some onion powder, and you can also add more seasonings to your spaghetti sauce mixture if you want to, but I like the taste of that spaghetti sauce, so I didn't add any extra. And then I added in a little bit of pepper, and we're going to add in an egg. And I do go back and add another egg in a little while because I felt like it was a little bit too thick because I doubled it and wasn't thinking about I needed to probably double the egg also. And then you're going to add in some mozzarella cheese. Probably about, I don't know, a couple handfuls. Couple of handfuls of mozzarella cheese, however much I added in there. But again, recipe will be down in the description box for y'all. So I added all that in there, and that's our cheese mixture. So my noodles are done, my sauce is ready, and my cheese mixture is good to go. And so what I start with is, I'm not going to cook these in the oven. Okay, they'll be cooked when you get ready to eat them, but they're essentially already cooked anyway. All the ingredients are cooked, but I'm just not going to bake them. So what I'm doing is I did spray my pans. I'm adding a little bit of sauce, enough to cover the bottom, because I don't want the noodles to get like hard and like crunchy on the bottom. You know what I mean? Because they bake and kind of dry out. So I'm adding in, I'm just kind of splitting everything up, and then I realized I had enough for one more pan. So I ended up doing 4 of these little pans, and again, these pans will be linked so y'all can see what size they are. So then I added my noodles, and then I split my cheese mixture amongst my 4 pans. Then you're going to add some provolone cheese. I added 3 pieces to each one. Then you're going to top this with more of your sauce, and the sauce I had left over, I put that in a bag and vacuum sealed it, so they can use it if they want to just make some spaghetti one night. And then I topped this with more mozzarella cheese, let it cool down completely, and then put your lids on, and that's it. Good to go. They're ready to go into the freezer just like that. Super, super easy and very delicious. But we ended up with 4, so then I really didn't feel guilty about eating one myself. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to make them is some breakfast bowls. I debated between breakfast bowls and breakfast burritos. Last time when she had her first baby, I did breakfast burritos, but I don't know. I made breakfast bowls for myself not too long ago, and they were so good. So I thought, you know what? That's what I'm going to do for them. So that is 2 pounds of frozen hash browns, and I'm going to season it up. Good bit of salt, pepper. I'm going to add some garlic powder, some onion powder. You can add anything you want to your potatoes. Again, I'm trying not to add a lot because I like to add Tonys to things a lot of times, but I'm trying not to do that, especially with these meals, just because I want the baby to be able to eat it, So then you're going to add some oil in your bowl, and I'm using olive oil, and then you're going to mix it up real good. You want to make sure that you get these potatoes, and I do go back and add a little bit more oil, but I don't think it's in the video. You want to make sure that these are very well coated in the oil, because when you bake them, oh yeah, there I go. When you bake them, if they're not like nice and oily, if they're not coated in the oil, they're not going to crisp up good. They get kind of mushy, in my humble opinion. But I lined my big baking sheet with some foil. I'm going to spray it good because potatoes like to stick, and I didn't want to take any chances. And then I'm just going to dump this out on here and spread it out as evenly as I can. And then you can just bake these according to whatever your package tells you to. You just want to make sure that halfway through the cooking time, you kind of stir them around, flip around, and all that kind of stuff. so that all the sides, get good and crispy. You don't want them to get real crispy on the bottom and not on the top. So now for their bowls, I'm going to do some sausage. I'm not a sausage fan, so when I do breakfast bowls, I normally do bacon, but they do like sausage. So I thought since we did bacon in their breakfast sandwiches, I would do sausage in their breakfast bowls, and that way they would have, a little bit of variety in their breakfast as well. So I'm going to brown this 1 pound of sausage, and I'm also going to add to this the bell peppers that we cut up or diced up or chopped up or whatever we did to them. I'm going to add those in there. And then I'm also going to add in some of that diced onion that the onion that we diced up. And again, here's where it comes in handy that we already have this stuff all diced up. So we're going to we're going to cook this until our vegetables are soft and our sausage is done. Okay. Super easy, super easy. You can do whatever kind of sausage you like, if you like hot sausage or whatever you want to do. So now I'm going to get the eggs all cracked up. And I think I ended up using, I don't know how many eggs I ended up using. Let's see, let's count them. 1. And I'm cracking these especially because they are fresh eggs that came from my mom and dad and my sister. So I want to make sure we don't have any fertilized eggs. So I'm going to crack them individually. I know y'all don't see me doing that a whole lot, but we're going to do it today. But I think I ended up doing 10, what is that? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I feel like the count on Sesame Street. We did about 16 eggs, I think. So 16 eggs is what I did for the amount that I'm doing. I added in some milk. I'm going to add a good bit of salt and pepper to these. Normally I add cottage cheese to my scrambled eggs, but I did not have any cottage cheese. I just like to put it in there. You can't taste it, and it's not a texture issue because it melts in there, but it just adds some extra protein, and I love to add that. But again, I didn't have any, so I couldn't do it. So our sausage and our vegetables are all done, so I'm going to dump those into our bowl because I'm going to use this same pan to cook our eggs in. So I'm just scraping out, a little bit of whatever, and I'm just going to use the rest of the oil that was left over from the sausage, and that's what I'm going to use to cook my eggs in. So I'm just going to dump them in there, and I left a little bit of this in here only because I know, because of comments I've seen, that I've got a lot of people who are new cooks that watch my channel, and I want to make sure that I don't, assume that everybody knows how to do everything, So for my scrambled eggs, this is the way I do it. You want to dump them into your hot pan, and you're just going to gently stir them around. You can see where they're starting to curdle or whatever you call it when you do eggs. They're starting to cook, and I just keep going. You're just scraping across my pan. Just keep on going until your eggs are done, until the liquid is gone. Now, for a recipe like this, if you're doing breakfast burritos or breakfast bowls that you're going to have to reheat, cook your eggs just a tad bit underdone, okay? And that way you won't end up with real dry eggs when you reheat this. So you see how they're still a little bit wet looking? They're done. You could eat them at this stage. And some people prefer them this way. I like mine done if I'm doing scrambled eggs. But when you're doing a recipe like this, you really need to leave them just a tad underdone so that they're not super dry when you reheat them. So then I'm just going to mix them in with my sausage mixture. And then now our potatoes are ready. Look how nice and brown and crispy and crunchy those are. I started out adding half the potatoes just to kind of see. I didn't want it to be overwhelmed with potatoes, but I did end up adding the whole 2 pounds of potatoes in there. And then now I'm going to add a couple of big handfuls of cheese. That seems like a lot of cheese, I know, but remember, so we've got 16 eggs, a pound of sausage, and 2 pounds of potatoes in there. So we got to have a good bit of cheese to balance it out. So you're just going to mix that up really, really good. And if you're making burritos with this, you're going to want to let this cool down before you make the burritos, because then the tortillas are going to get kind of wet from the heat. So just I'm putting mine in bowls, obviously, so I'm not worried about them going in there hot because I'll let them cool down in the bowl. But you're just going to scoop those in there, just evenly distribute them. Again, those are 2-cup containers that I'm using. But I thought, her husband is going to be eating these potentially, and it did end up making 8 of these. And I put a little bit more cheese on top because, who doesn't like cheese? And I also thought if she wanted one and didn't want to eat the whole thing, that there was enough for her to share with the 2-year-old. So now we are going to move on to our next recipe, and we are going to make some chicken pot pies. So I added in, what did I add in? 3 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to add my onion to that, my diced onion. Then once that gets a little bit, when your onion's pretty much done, you're going to add in a spoonful of minced garlic, and you can absolutely mince your own garlic if you want to. That's absolutely fine. We're going to stir that around for about 30 or 45 seconds. Don't go too long because you don't want the garlic to burn, because then everything's going to be bitter and nobody wants that. So just mix it up real good. Let it cook, like I said, 20-30 seconds. And then we're going to add in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, because we're going to make a roux, because we want our pot pie to be creamy. You want the filling to be creamy, right? So 3 tablespoons of flour, and then we're going to let that cook 2 or 3 minutes just to kind of cook that raw flour out. And then we're going to add in our chicken broth, and we're going to add 1 3/4 cup of chicken broth. Just add it in slowly and whisk it really good. And then I let that kind of heat a little bit, kind of thicken up just a tad, It doesn't take long. And then we're going to add in some heavy whipping cream. You need 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And we're going to whisk that in there, get that good and mixed up, and then you're going to just let that heat, come back to a little boil again. It doesn't take long because it's already hot. So it's not going to take long to heat back up, but I just like to let everything come back to a boil in between and let it kind of thicken up, So now, once we get all these little additions added in, of course, we are going to, add in a little bit of seasoning. So I'm adding in some salt, some pepper, and then I'm going to add in some garlic powder and some onion powder, just because those are the things that I always add to everything. You can add whatever things you want to add to yours, but that's just the seasonings I like to add. And again, I didn't go heavy-handed on the salt and stuff, because I like to, especially when you make stuff for somebody else, I like for them to be able to adjust stuff. So remember those chicken breasts that I told you I was going to cook? Well, I cooked them, and then I diced them up into little tiny dices, and I just added that right into my pot. And you can do this if you want to make turkey pot pie or beef pot pie, whatever. Use whatever kind of meat you want to. And then I added in I think it's a 10-ounce bag of frozen vegetables. I'm not adding potatoes to mine. I usually don't when I make it homemade, just because it's easier to do it this way. But you can add potatoes if you want to, okay? Whatever you want to add to yours will work. It'll be just fine. So I would recommend taste it at this point and see if you feel like it needs more seasoning. And if it does, go ahead and add more seasoning now and, get it mixed in there. I do add a little sprinkle of salt and pepper to the very top of mine. After I get it put into the containers. But again, season it however you want to. I think the last time I made this on the channel, I think I added Tony's to it, and it's so good, y'all. This filling is delicious. Now, one thing I did different this time is I did not add a bottom crust. And when I make a full chicken pot pie, and when I made the mini ones last time, I used like a pie crust. But I thought for this one, because it's a deeper, kind of an odd-shaped container, and I feel like it would have been kind of weird trying to get it down in there, I went with puff pastry. And actually, one of y'all had made a comment that I think that y'all use puff pastry on your chicken pot pie. So I thought, I have puff pastry. I can't even say it. I have puff pastry. So I'm going to use that. So I sprayed my pans real good, y'all saw, and then I just equally divided all of my mixture. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It made 6 pot pies, and these are deeper pot pies than what you get at the store, just in case you're wondering how much is in there. And then I'm just kind of rolling it out, not to get it flat necessarily, but to just kind of get all of the breaks and cracks and stuff all good and sealed up. And then I'm just going to take my biggest cookie cutter, which is, I think it's a little over 3 inches, and I'm going to cut out the crust for these. And we're just going to do a top crust. And I'm not going to bake these today. This is going to be, because your filling is already done. So when you do bake these, all you're doing is cooking your crust. You know, so it's super simple. So I'm going to save that puff pastry and use it for something else. But for these, I just rolled them out a tiny bit just to make them fit a little bit better. And then just like with our, what was it that we made? Macaroni and cheese, how I used 1 sheet of foil and I just cut it into squares. That's exactly the same thing I'm doing with that. And those are good to go in the freezer. So the next thing I'm going to make is French toast sticks. I had asked my niece what was some things that the baby would want to eat. I say the baby, not the newborn. The 2-year-old is who I'm talking about. And she said that he does like toast sticks, like the kind you get like from Sam's or Walmart. So that's what we're going to make. I'm going to make a whole loaf. And these, you don't have to use the heel if you're weird about it, or the booty. What do y'all call that? We call it the booty of the bread, but I know a lot of people call it the heel. What do y'all call? Tell me what y'all call the end piece of the bread. Tell me what y'all call it. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm taking this Texas toast. You want some thick bread for this. So if you do homemade bread, which I have a good homemade bread recipe on the channel, just cut it thick. So I just cut it into thirds, and then we are going to get our dipping stuff together. So I started out, I'm going to get that shell out, don't worry. I started out with 4 eggs because sometimes I make it and I have a lot left over. So I started kind of low, and then I'm just going to add to it if I need to. So I started with 4 eggs, a half a cup of milk. I add a little pinch of salt and about a teaspoon-ish of vanilla. And if I'm making regular French toast, I would add cinnamon into this mixture. But because I'm doing this for the kids and the way that they make them, they're like coated kind of in cinnamon and sugar. So instead of putting that into my milk and egg mixture, I'm just going to roll them in the cinnamon and sugar. And that's cinnamon and sugar that we made together on the channel, which it's not hard to do. I just made me a big jar for times such as these. So you're going to take, why am I doing this with a fork? Who knows? Knowing I got to go elbow deep in this egg in a minute. But what I was saying is you're going to dip your bread and then you're just going to cook it. You're going to make sure you cook it, flip it, and then stand it up on both sides and make sure you get it cooked all 4 sides, all the way around. It's super easy. And then as soon as you take them off the griddle when they're done, roll them in your cinnamon and sugar. And then I put mine on a cooling rack on a cookie sheet so that all the cinnamon sugar doesn't get everywhere. And then you just let them cool completely, throw them in the freezer, let them freeze, and then put them in a Ziploc bag. It's super easy. But what I was telling y'all is I did run out of my egg and milk mixture. So I ended up doing a total of 8 eggs and a cup of milk is what it took for this entire loaf. Because I've made these before, but I didn't do the entire loaf last time. Excuse me. So you can see how much this makes. I end up doing 2 baggies of this because my middle grandson, this is one of his favorite things. So I just went ahead and split into 2 bags, and I'm going to give one to my niece and I'll give one to my daughter for the grandkids. So because it makes a ton. But again, you can make them in just regular full-size pieces of toast if that's the way you want to do it. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to do is some of these freezer biscuits. Now, y'all saw me make these on the channel before. Actually, by the time you're seeing this, you will have seen me make this 2 different ways in 2 different videos. But you'll see it. But anyway, So I'm making a bunch of these biscuits because, again, I thought another breakfast option, or I like breakfast for dinner, so they could make like biscuits and gravy for dinner or something, whatever they want to do. So what I added was 4 cups of self-rising flour, and then I'm adding 3 cups of heavy whipping cream. This is going to make a ton of biscuits, okay? And you can cook them fresh, obviously. They're delicious. There's different instructions whether you cook them fresh or cook them frozen. They will be in the description box for y'all. So you're going to mix that up really, really good, and that's it. That's all you have to do. You're going to put some flour down on your counter because this is a very sticky dough. So put some flour down on your counter, and then you're going to dump your dough out into your flour. And then you're just going to kind of work it around until it's not super sticky anymore. And then we're going to cut these. Now, I will tell you, I was temporarily insane when I was doing this video. This was getting towards the end of the meal prep video for me, and I was real tired, y'all. But, I mean, we have a couple more recipes, but this was, getting it, near the end of day 2 or 3, or I don't know, I'd lost track at this point. And somewhere in my brain, I know probably why I did it. I initially was going to make cinnamon rolls for them. And then I was just like, I don't have it in me. Like that, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And so, you see what I'm doing with this biscuit dough? I'm folding it into thirds and then flipping it, folding it again. That's going to create layers in your biscuit, okay, if you haven't seen the video before of me making these. And then you're going to roll these out to about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick, depending on how thick you want your biscuits. Now, they're going to rise up pretty good. But if you will look, I rolled this out, the thickness as if I was going to make cinnamon rolls. They're very thin. And now, it's okay. They're still going to rise up. I actually did cook a couple of them. But they're just not going to get as big because they started out smaller, if that makes sense. So you're just going to keep going until you have cut all your biscuits out. When the dough looks like that, you're going to gather it all back up together, mash it back together, and do it all over again until you've cut everything out. Now, y'all see I got a few wonky biscuits. Now, I threw those in the freezer, but because my freezer is narrow, so I can't put a wide pan in there, and I have so much other freezer stuff in there with all the meals I've made. I just piled them on this one pan and froze them. So some of them were not quite frozen, so I'm just kind of picking through. If they're frozen, I'm throwing them in the bag, and if not, I throw them back in the freezer a little longer. But that is your biscuits. They're super, super easy to make, and they're really, really good, y'all. Okay, so this is the part that really is the postpartum part of this video. I am making lactation brownies. This recipe is not mine. I did change it up just a tiny bit, but I found it on Pinterest, I think, and I wrote it down. I don't remember where I found it. If I can go back and find it, I will link it for y'all. But I did write out the recipe for y'all, just so you'll have it. But it's not my original recipe, okay? But they're actually called booby bites, which I thought was adorable. I was like, well, I'm making that for sure. So what you're going to do is add 1 box of your favorite brownie mix, whatever kind of brownie mix you like, 2/3 of a cup of oil, vegetable oil, or whatever kind of oil you use. Then you're going to add in 2 eggs. We're going to add in 1/2 cup of coconut milk. And I didn't say this, but preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we are going to make these into muffins, okay? So add in your 1/2 cup of coconut milk. Then we're going to add in I'm going to mix this up, I think. Nope, I'm going to add oats first. I thought I stopped and mixed it somewhere, but who knows? I don't know what I've done. I've slept since then. All right, so we're adding in 1 cup of old-fashioned oats. And then we are going to add, excuse me, we're going to add in the the special ingredients, the secret ingredients. We're going to add in some brewer's yeast, okay? We're going to add in 1/4 of a cup of brewer's yeast. Now, I haven't done all the research on why exactly and what the mechanism and all that kind of stuff is, but when my daughter had her babies, I know that she made like lactation bites and things like that. And these are the things that go into them because they're good for breastfeeding mamas. So that's what we're doing. I added 1/4 of a cup of brewer's yeast, and I'm adding in 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. Then we're going to add in some vanilla, teaspoon, tablespoon, whatever. And then we're going to add in 1 cup of chocolate chips. These are chocolatey brownies. And I will tell you that I tasted one of these. They're delicious. They're very delicious. They're very delicious. And I said this I did on my other channel. I did like the grocery haul and stuff for this. And I did say, it doesn't matter if you're breastfeeding or not. You can still eat these. It's not going to make you lactate, okay? It's not. I promise. We all tasted them last time I made these, or last time I made the cookies that I'm going to make. And her husband even ate some of them. They are so good, y'all. So, even if you're not breastfeeding, you can make these. They're delicious. So I mixed everything up. Then I added in our chocolate chips. So I sprayed, this is my gigantic muffin pan. What did I tell y'all to preheat the oven? 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I did say that. So you're going to just scoop your mixture into your muffin pan. And then we're going to bake those for about 20 to 25 minutes is how long mine took. I can't remember exactly. Somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes. And then once they're done, you're going to pop them out of the muffin pan, let them cool down, and they're good to go. And I'm going to give y'all the money shot. I'm going to show y'all the inside of one of these cookies. They're so good. I mean, these muffins, they're really, really good, y'all. They are delicious. So, even if you're not a breastfeeding mama, y'all might want to make these. But y'all see half of that disappeared right into my mouth. Sorry, niece of mine. I ate one of your brownies. So that's all you have to do. I'm throwing them in the bag, and we're just going to throw them in the freezer. And then she can take a few out, let them thaw out on the counter, and she'll have them whenever she wants them. So that's it. Big old bag of brownies. So the next thing that we're going to make are lactation cookies. And these, I am telling y'all, are so good. These are delicious. All right, so what you're going to do for these, we're not going to cook these. If you want to see them cooked, I do have an individual video on this, but we're not going to cook these today. I'm making these for her freezer. So you're going to take 2 sticks of butter or 1 cup of softened butter. Your butter needs to be soft. And then you're going to add in your sugars. We're going to add in 1/2 of a cup of white sugar. And then we're going to add in 1 cup of packed brown sugar. And I need to make some more brown sugar. I keep saying it, and I haven't done it. And I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel here. Like I am just, I think I pretty much did it in with this recipe right here. So you're going to add in 1 cup of packed brown sugar. I packed it as good as I could, y'all. I packed it in there as good as I could. And then we're going to let this sugar and butter cream together while we get everything else together. Okay? We're just going to let it go until we get everything else ready to add to it. Okay. So we are going to add in here, excuse me, I've been talking for so long, y'all, my mouth's dry. All right, 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm just kind of fluffing it up with my cup. And I had my 1/2 cup measuring cup, and it had sugar in it, so I didn't want to dip it into the flour, so that's why I'm pouring it from 1 cup into the other, in case anybody was curious. But 1.5 cups of your flour is what you're going to need. Then we're going to add in, what are we adding in? Let me see. Salt. We're adding salt. We're adding 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to add in 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. And we're going to add some more of our brewer's yeast. We're going to add 1/3 of a cup of the brewer's yeast. And I got this on Amazon, and I will also have this linked along with like all the other things that I'm going to link for y'all, like the pans and all that. I will link the brewer's yeast as well. Excuse me. Now we're going to add in our flaxseed. We're going to add 3 tablespoons of the flaxseed in there. And then we're going to add in some more oats to this. Some old-fashioned oats. I'm going to add those in here. And we're going to add 3 cups of those. Now, the recipes call for old-fashioned oats, but if all you have is the regular oats, then use whatever you have. I don't know that I would use steel cut, but, you know, if you have instant or regular, the texture will be a little bit different, but it'll still be fine. It'll still be fine. So don't go out and buy that particular thing special if if that's the only thing that you don't have. So I added 3 cups of the old-fashioned oats right into my dry ingredients. And then we are going to get that all mixed up. And then we'll start adding in the other wet ingredients. And then we'll get these cookies to come together. But like I said, I'm not cooking these cookies today. We're not baking these. I am putting together a bag of frozen cookies for her. And that way she can just take out a few at a time if she wants to. Now, if she wants to cook the whole bag in one day, she absolutely can. But if not, then she can just take out 2 or 3 cookies if she wants to. And then, nothing's going to go bad. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I added into my butter and sugar mixture 2 eggs, room temperature. And then I added in probably 2 or 3 teaspoons of vanilla. And then we're going to add in our dry ingredients. Okay, just add all your little dry ingredients in there, except for, we are going to add chocolate chips and pecans in here, but we're not going to add those right now. We're going to kind of fold those in a minute. So we're going to add the dry ingredients to the wet, and then we're going to mix this until it is just combined. So when you no longer see any, loose flour, then just stop. And even if it's a tiny bit that's still not quite mixed in, that's okay, because when we mix the chocolate chips and stuff in there, all that extra flour will get mixed in. But you don't want to over mix it and make your cookies tough. We want these to be nice and tender and yummy and chewy. So now I'm going to add in about 1.5 cups-ish, the whole container of chocolate chips. 1.5 cups is what the recipe calls for. And then I'm going to add in about 1 cup-ish of chopped pecans. Okay? And when I made these originally in the video I didn't add pecans, but I think I mentioned it. But I asked my niece specifically this time. I said, hey, do you want some pecans in your cookies? So she said yes. So I added some pecans to her cookies, but you don't have to add them. So then I'm just scooping these. I think this is my small cookie scoop, because I think I broke the medium one, and it's definitely not the big one. So you're just going to scoop these into balls, and I do tighten the little balls up in a minute. And then these are going to go into your freezer on the cookie sheet. Once they're frozen, bring them back out of the freezer and throw them over in your Ziploc bag. Super, super easy. And now she can just pull out and have cookies anytime she wants them. This is a great way to do any kind of cookie. If you're like somebody who likes cookies, but maybe you live by yourself and every cookie recipe makes 50 cookies, then you can just do them like this and cook as many as you want. So this is our huge meal prep, y'all. I ended up, like I said, with 17 individual, different meals and completely different recipes. It's more meals than that, but 17 different things for them to choose from. So I know that they're going to appreciate it. I know that they're going to enjoy it. It's going to make their life just a tiny bit easier, which is the only thing I'm worried about anyway. And yeah, that's it. So I hope that y'all enjoyed this huge postpartum meal prep video. And even if you're not postpartum, you can get some good ideas. All right, that is all that I have for y'all today, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.